Hello folks, welcome to the Tech channel. Today we are going to learn how to use event on JavaScript. On previous tutorial we learned how to use functions in JavaScript. So events in JavaScript basically is this two different type of events. This can be happening by the browser automatically or can be happening part of a user action. So let's see actually this type of them, and there is actually many of different type of this JavaScript event. I'm going to leave the documentation for them down of this video. I'm going to explain some of them in this tutorial, just the common ones that usually you would use, and then the rest of them you will find them down so you can go through if you need to go more in details and to learn them. But what we learn in this tutorial basically is the common and the basics that usually event we use on when building a website or a simple web application. Let's just declare variable here, call it default value, and then assign it just to empty string, because we assign this to late because we are going to update this value later. And then after this here, let's just declare our first handler here, just call const handle change. It's just a function. We learned in the last tutorial how to declare a function. So we're declaring a function here, call it handle change, and this function has this parenthesis here, then arrow function, and this E6 syntax. We'll actually use this function syntax in all coming tutorials, in some example if we needed to use our functions. This function will expect a parameter, and this param will be called event. And then inside here we'll need to do some logic with this event, but for now let's add here after this h1, let's add input, HTML element input, and one of the input actually event is on change. So this is one, this is the most important one in input. Usually we use event called on change. Basically this is when you type inside on input, so basically we'll fire this event, and this event will call a callback functions. So calling this function here or passing this function inside this curly bracket or object bracket, then this approach here is called a callback function, but you can call it differently because this on change will expect this one. So this type of function without a name, this function here doesn't have a name, so it's called a callback function. Inside here then we can call actually this handle change, and this is how to call a function as we learned in the previous tutorial. And this function by default will have a param called event, so then we pass that event down here. So this is the full syntax for this callback function. Let me just change this line here because I'm going to also show you the second way how to call this on change. Let's just comment this here, and we'll leave this only just for you can come back later and try review it. So the second syntax basically just to call this directly like that without doing all this logic here. To avoid that, automatically we'll call this function and then it will pass this event params. So this it's called usually callback function. So then inside here we need to update this value actually with whatever we type inside this input. And how to access that value, usually that will be part of this event, and this event will be an object, and inside that object we'll have a target, and then inside this target will be also an object. Inside this target we'll have a value. This is the value that we enter inside this input, and then save it. And then next here let's also add a button, HTML button, and that button just call it submit. And just let's save this and go to the browser. Let's reload. This is from previous tutorial. So now if we try to type here for example hello, then that's a hello, but we need to see what we type here to be displayed somewhere else. See, this function here is updating this value. We need to display this value. To display this value, let's just call here. So inside the bottom, basically also in bottom, the common event handler or event that so we use is called on click. So you will use this a lot actually while you're learning and start developing any application. The same on click basically will actually use call a function same this on change handler, handle change, just call it change click or handle click. And then also this will expect event, And instead of actually assigning here, inside here we need to just call alert, and inside this alert we need to display this message or display the value that we type inside the input. And again, let's call this function inside here. As I mentioned, this will be called callback, same as this syntax. If we save it, come to the browser, reload, try type here hello, and then press click, and that's now displaying this message here, hello. So let's just recap this again. So first, inside the input we call this onChange, and onChange will call this function, and then that will pass this event. The event will include the value we type inside that input. Then we updating this variable to equal to that value. The new value is just added down inside that input, and then we click on this button. When we click on inside this button, we'll fire this event, and this event will call this function called handle click. And so we don't actually use this event here, we just ignore it. What we'll do inside, we'll call just this alert, and inside the alert will display this value that we enter inside input. And the second syntax for this on click also, let's show you as we show for input, or like for this on change. So let's just duplicate this here. We can do the same logic for that, same what we did here. Basically we can call this function here like that way, just that it. So, and also this has event. If we need to pass event, we can just pass it down here. So this is also syntax, this different syntax, but it will do the same, what both of them doing the same process. I will comment this out and leave it just for you for review, and you can come back later and just play with this code. If I save it, go back again, well done, then submit, well done. So that's how to use and declare event in JavaScript. And usually, so as I mentioned, this post will be this part of a user action, and the browser action. Usually, for example, if you need to rely on when the browser is loaded, then you can use load event, and we'll leave that all list of event documentation actually down of this video. You can go through if you'd like to know more about event, but this initially how to use event in JavaScript. And thank you for watching, and if you didn't subscribe, try subscribe so you can get all new video and tutorial, and see you in very next tutorial.